So, welcome back, Adam Gibbs, for part 2 of episode 26 of Vision and Light. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
It's only a mere moment since we last spoke.
Felt like it. I'm still wearing the same clothes.
You're looking older.
I am older.
Now, obviously in part 1, we got into a bit of a rant about contemporary photography versus old school photography versus the meaning of photography even, and why people are making photographs. Now, your brand, your company is Quiet Light. Dig the hat.
Yeah.
Looking good.
The patch is a little bit big. I think I need to reduce it just a bit. It almost takes over the whole of my head.
And that's a big patch then.
It's just to keep my hair back, because my hair's getting...
Yeah, well, you can get some Quiet Light scrunchies.
Yeah, now you're talking.
Hang
on, let me write that down.
Yeah, I want 10%.
Things to sell.
Soul. And no, so your brand is kind of Quiet Light, and I think we talked a little bit about that in the first episode, where your photography has that quiet, introspective, reflective feel to it, whereas my whole reason for making photographs and so forth is expressive photography. So I'd like to kind of get the take on that in terms of how much overlap there is between Quiet Light and expressive photography in terms of the type of photographs that we're making and the relationship that you have with not just the photograph, but when you're in the field. So from my take on the whole thing, the sort of the expressive photography angle is that there's an emotional connection with the scene that you're photographing. There's a trigger. There's something that makes you point your camera at that. Now, you've talked a lot about light in the past. And my argument would be, well, there's an emotional relationship with us and light, so when you get nice light, if you're driving through the landscape and it's cloudy and overcast, and the next minute a beam of light shines on a patch of autumn color, you feel it in your emotional, there's an emotional reaction to it.
Yes, most definitely.
So is that something that you're really conscious of, or do you just, because this is what I write about, this is what I talk about, this is what I vlog about, this is the whole reason for photography for me, is understanding those emotional relationships. How important is understanding that for you versus just the aesthetics of things?
Well, very. There's been lots of times where it's usually when I'm driving, you'll be driving along and all of a sudden you'll just see this beautiful light. And it's funny because usually it could be on the most mundane of subjects, but it doesn't really matter because you're really just concentrating on the light. And I remember a friend of mine, Michael Wheatley, photographer, local photographer, we used to go out on trips a lot together. And he used to say, you could pretty much go to the Vancouver dump, and if you have nice light there, you could probably find something to photograph. And it's true, if I see some really great light, then that's what I usually will concentrate on. The subject just doesn't matter. Unfortunately, though, on Vancouver Island, I'm not sure what it's like in Scotland, but on the island here, like I said, no, it sounds like I'm whining a little bit, but we don't get an awful lot of fantastic light. We get a lot because the whole island is covered in trees, so it's very dark in a lot of areas, and you don't get those nuances of light like you say you might do in the mountains or such. So it kind of forces you to try and really concentrate on even the smallest of nuances in light, and you when you're trying to explain it to people, they're kind of shaking their head thinking, well, what's this guy talking about? He's just making this all up, and but that's what you have to look for. You just have to look for these really small nuances, and then once you get them into Photoshop or Lightroom, try and kind of just push them a little bit to either side so that you can make something out of that, Like recently, I've been photographing a lot of woodland, old growth forest. I mean, those areas are so dark and dingy.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get something out of there because there's just no light, you know. So you have to really play on those little nuances. It's funny. Karen and I last week we went out. I'm not kidding, Alistair. It's so dark in there. I was shooting at ISO 800 for most shots, and even then, I was still in the seconds. You know,
Right.
I mean, it's so dark and dingy.
Yeah.
It's pouring with rain, and but once you get those in, you know, actually the JPEGs, because I shoot JPEGs as well, they turned out just absolutely fantastic. I'm
Right.
really surprised. So yeah, but it's the nuances of light, and that's what excites me.
So, you know, because I think this is where expressive photography, because you and I have had this conversation, is it lighter composition? And
Yeah.
you know, my whole take on the whole thing is that luminosity and contrast, even without direct sunlight, you can still have contrast. You can still have brighter areas and darker areas, and those brighter areas play the role of the good light almost, because they're
Yes.
forming the structure. They're forming, I always describe it as the melody of the image, the highlights, whether they're just brighter midtones, relation to the shadows. There's still a contrast there that's creating that same kind of emotional pull. But you're right, that combination of direct sunlight and the temperature of that light, you know, the warmth of that light, I think that's where you get this the double whammy of luminosity and warmth. And I think there's a big psychological uplift with that. I mean, who you've got to be pretty down on life not to feel your heart rise when you get some warm light hitting some snow or something like that.
Oh, I just find it so exciting. I mean, especially when you go to a new area. I remember, I mean, right off the top of my head, a couple of years ago, my friend Jeremy and I went up to the Bugaboos in the interior of British Columbia, and we hiked up into the mountains. And at that time, that year, we had a lot of wildfires, so the light was just terrible. But the smoke slowly cleared. And what happened was we started to get sun come through the clouds, and we had these amazing beams of light. And I just remember, I just thought, God, that is just unbelievable, you know. And this kind of relates back to what we talked about in the first episode, when you start to manipulate images so far that you're actually putting those beams of light in, it kind of takes away the integrity of what you're going out to photograph. Like that's what we saw. We saw these beams of light, but if I had put those in there, then so what? You know, it doesn't have the same feeling for me. It might have the same feeling for my audience, but it's not about my audience, it's for me. So yeah, those moments when you do get that great light and you're not putting into your photograph through post-processing, then those are the special moments. And they're not going to happen all the time. They happen very rarely, but when they do happen, I don't know, I just love that stuff. It's just, and that's what keeps me, well, I think that's what keeps most photographers going back for more, you know.
I think so. I think so. But you know, I was thinking, I've got really back into bird watching this year. It started last year. I'm trying to make more time in my life for things.
Well, I guess you can, right? Because you have to do it from your window. You can't go out.
Well, when you're locked down, you know, I mean, but you know, staying local even. But at the same time, you know, and this isn't going to come across as a whinge. You and I were both involved in a video that David Johnston posted a few weeks ago about the realities of being a professional landscape photographer.
Yeah.
And Gavin, myself, and you, and there was a few others involved as well. But I think David was sort of putting across this feeling that it's not all playing in beautiful light in the countryside. You know, a vast majority or a very large part of our work is sat in front of this thing or sat in front of that thing, making content and making a living. It's not all about running around in the countryside. And I think what I wanted to do this year was to try and find a balance in my life so I can sit and play guitar, or I can get back into birding. And going out bird watching and seeing a bird well in good light and just seeing how magnificent they are, you know, and on the island you got some beautiful birds, you know, Barrow's golden eyes and harlequin ducks and bald eagles and, you know, your hummingbirds in the summer. You know, when you see those little guys in the sunlight feeding and embracing, you know, nature, really, it's a magnificent thing. And we talked about this in the first episode, that it used to be all just nature photography. And it was the experience of being in nature and discovering and finding and seeing something new and experiencing the joy and elation of those things. And I think this is what expressive photography is about. This is what quiet light is about. And I think they seem to be extremely genuine reasons to be in the landscape with a camera. If you want to photograph birds, like Alan Murphy down in Texas, world's greatest bird photographer, you know, and we're all over the world now just exploring our local areas and finding these exciting, beautiful things out there. And we're kind of mirroring it somewhat what we talked about last week, which is this sort of authenticity of the experience. And that's something that I think both of us just seem to be such huge proponents of. So obviously I was waxing lyrical there about, you know, the authenticity of the experience and so forth. And we had to pause because your internet went down. So we're back on we're back on a clean slate and we can start again.
Right.
Now, just last week, you hit 50,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. So congratulations for that.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's been a while. It's taken a while, but I think it's the channel has definitely gone in the right direction. You know, it's slowly going up, but it's more the quality of the subscribers, you know.
are you saying
quality, not quantity?
Are you okay? Quality, not quantity. Oh, so that means my 15,700 must be of extremely high quality then.
Definitely, definitely. And then you know, I'll appear in one of Gavin's videos, and then my subscribers kind of go down a bit, and then it goes up again.
Oh, it's the what's it they say in every. Anyway, I was going to try.
Oh, we were talking about integrity, you know, and I'm like, yeah, just don't watch me on Gavin's channel. Maybe integrity goes down like that.
It's the only thing that keeps you afloat.
Hey, you got to have fun with it, eh? I mean,
well, that's right. You know, and I think fun, that's a really great word for us to focus on, is that photography should be fun. I think we get, and you know, this is the thing, is as soon as it becomes your job, as soon as, well, I mean, you and I have both been photographers for a long, long time, and making our living as photographers for quite a long time. And, you know, how many people in their regular work life are really happy at work? You know, it's probably quite a small percentage of people that wake up in the morning and say, oh yeah, I can't wait to go to work. But I think we're mostly lucky, is that I'm trying to find this balance, like I was saying a few moments ago. I'm trying to find this balance between photography, producing the content, paying our bills and food and transport and all the stuff that we have to pay, and gear, versus playing guitar and birding and doing things that normal people would call hobbies. So how do you see this balance between, we've talked about it before, you know, this kind of integrity of your sort of the authenticity of your experiences and you feeling like you're being authentic and honest? And, you know, because I think that's one of the charms with your channel, is that you very much see who you are. I mean, the person you are on screen when you're doing your videos is the guy I hang out with when we hook up and have a beer. You know, you don't seem to strike me as the type of guy that's going to sell out just to get a few more subs.
No, and I don't think I need to, because I mean, you always want to do better, right? But then I think to myself, well, I mean, when it comes to monetary, I mean, how much money do you need? Now, in my case, because I'm a little bit older and for various reasons that I won't get into, I don't have a lot of money saved up for retirement or anything like that. So yeah, I do have to kind of put my kind of get into gear a little bit more and try and make a little bit more money so that I have something to retire with. I mean, if something happened to me tomorrow, heaven forbid, touch wood, you know, I might be in dire straits, you know, because I don't have a backup plan. I'm just kind of winging this whole thing. But I don't know. That's the problem I've always had, is I've always gone into things full steam ahead and not really kind of thought about the consequences. And I do it for my own personal satisfaction and my own happiness, rather than thinking about the future. And in some ways that's to my detriment, but in other ways it's worked for me, because I see so many people, they are fed up with their jobs, or they do work so hard and they don't have any time to do the things that they love. And it is hard to balance those things. It's always either people have lots of money and no time, or lots of time and no money. It's really hard to especially in North America, because most people here maybe get 2 weeks holiday, 3 weeks if they're lucky, which is nothing. You know, I mean, how can you pursue any kind of hobby or a passion with 3 weeks and weekends, especially if you have a family? Then but then you know, but then I think to myself, well, I don't know as if I'd want to be 20 something now, or 30, starting up a career in photography. I mean, I don't know if I could do YouTube for 30 years. I mean, I don't know if I could sustain it. I don't know. Could you?
You know, well, you know, you and I are very similar in many ways, in that I was never particularly money driven. It was never my reason for working. And like you, it was about experiencing life and growing and trying to become a nice person, and, you know, understanding the world and my place in it and what I can contribute, I suppose. And we're in a similar situation, is that we're having to start thinking now much more seriously about providing for our future when we can't do this anymore, or, like you say, God forbid, if I get sick or injured and all of a sudden you can't produce content, we'd be equally scuppered. I think what we've just done is we've provided the perfect segue into us moving in with you and pooling our resources.
That ain't gonna happen, Alistair.
Well, Gavin, he's got a bigger house. We can all move in with Gavin.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, you know, we need to get this back on track. But, you know, I think what we're really trying to say is that the contemporary scene of being a professional landscape photographer is about trying to balance some form of integrity and self-esteem / worth, versus just selling out to make as much money as possible, you know, and have a more comfortable lifestyle. So I got an email this week from a young woman who was asking my advice about starting out in a career in landscape photography. And I said, I'm not going to lie. I said, no one in their right mind is going to recommend that you do that. And I felt horrible, you know, sort of. It's not like you want to kill someone's dreams and stuff like that.
No, not at all. But at the same time, you got to keep it real, you know. Like I never dreamt of doing. I always dreamt about doing nature photography for a living, but I never really pursued it. I was doing my garden photography, and that was enough for me. And I really enjoyed garden photography, but I tried to keep the two things separate, because nature photography was definitely more of a hobby.
Right.
And I didn't want to ruin that love of going outside and taking images. I mean, it was kind of the same with rock climbing, because I was right into climbing back in the 80s. That's all I did. I just dreamt, and I thought I was going to be climbing for the rest of my life. And then I started teaching rock climbing, and that was probably the worst thing I could have ever done. Because it got to the point where I just didn't like climbing anymore, because I was teaching it, and it's, you know. So with this is a little bit different, because we have so much going on, all these different avenues with the YouTube, and now I'm printing lots, and then next week I might be doing something else. So I really enjoy it, because there's all these different things you can do. but the
Well, this
photography
is
is,
it. It's about this diversity now. I mean, this is what we were saying, is it used to be about going out and taking photographs as a hobby, as I used to do. And now it's about producing content and writing ebooks or making videos or,
yeah,
making photo books or printing, it's
it's pretty exciting. Because, and then all of a sudden you might talk to someone and they come up with an idea and oh yeah, I might try that and
yeah.
go and try that. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun right now. So,
Yeah, me too. Me too. I find that I've always been a big fan of New Year. I think it's one of those times that's, the sort of historical context of it being the sort of midwinter and moving into the new year, and you're putting the worst of the winter behind you. And I always find it a very optimistic time of the year. I get very excited at New Year. I think there's always an opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself and try something new, and set off on a new plan and things like that. We're just starting mentorships this week, in fact, which is another avenue of kind of exciting content. So something that I've missed is, we haven't actually been face to face since early August when we were in Iceland together, and that was the only time we got to hang out in 2020. You were supposed to be over in Scotland in November on this workshop that we're going to be doing together, which has been rescheduled for November 2021. And we're quietly hoping with some little tiny touch of optimism that will actually happen this year. So what I was going to say is that it's open for people to make reservations again, but we're not going to take deposits. There's just no point in taking money off people until we know 100% that this thing can go ahead. So just to let people know that the link down below, people can sign up for Adam and I's joint workshop in the west of Scotland in November. And we can guarantee all that beautiful, sexy light that you were talking about. Or rain.
I really hope it happens, because I've only been to Scotland once, and I absolutely loved it. That's a different environment, so anywhere new is always exciting.
We do get lots of atmospheric light here. It's one of the things we really, really get here, and obviously I found a little area just up the glen from where we live that's really, really like old growth forest. It's these old pine trees covered in moss and lichen and stuff like that, and
Nice.
it's the most BC like part of Scotland I've ever found. So it's really funny to find my little bit of Adam Gibbs zone.
I don't want to go there then.
I'm just looking for the waterfall to run
more
through.
Trees. I don't want more trees.
We're going to run the workshop there.
I'm sick of trees.
There you go, Adam. Knock yourself out. Just like BC.
I want meadows with sheep.
Well, we'll see if there's any sheep left by the time you get over here. So hopefully that's going to happen. But what if you had any hopes and aspirations for 2021? What would they be, both professionally and personally?
Oh, well, I'd really like to do a little bit more in the mountains. I haven't, because I used to do a lot in the mountains, but the last year or so, I really haven't. I haven't done much hiking at all, and or backcountry camping. I mean, the last time I went camping was in Iceland, and most of my camping these days seems to be jumping in the back of my van. So I'd really like to do more backcountry camping, especially before I get too old and crotchety. I would really like to explore more of northern British Columbia. I still haven't done an awful lot up there. There's some absolutely amazing stuff in northern British Columbia. And as far as work goes, it's all an open book. All these new opportunities keep getting thrown my way, and you kind of, well, I don't want to do that, and then you might want to do this. In some ways, not doing the workshops, and I've heard this from a bunch of people, it's really opened up a lot of doors for other things that I never really thought about.
Totally.
I think with a lot of landscape photographers, I mean, we're all pretty much one track mind. It's like workshop, workshop, workshop. Well, in the past it has been, and now all of a sudden that's gone. So it's forced us to think of other ways to make a bit of money. Like as I said, right now I'm doing a lot of printing, and I absolutely love printing. I haven't done that much in the last couple of years because I've been doing my YouTube channel. I mean, you can see my printer back here. It's a pretty old one. It's a 7880
Right.
Epson. I think it's about 11 years old.
Right.
But it's the print quality is still really great. So I'd like to do more printing. But of course, if you do lots of printing, then you have to either sell the prints or you can't just keep printing. I mean,
No.
so you have to find a market for those prints. And so, yeah, I think it's just going to be more of the same for me. How about you?
Well, I'm the same as you. Is that it's 2020 was the kind of panic management year. I felt is that we had all of our income stripped away when the workshops all got cancelled, and that was going to be our income because obviously that's what we'd been doing for quite a few years. So obviously when all that stuff got cancelled, it was all of a sudden this very panic management type of situation. Not in a very panicky way. I tend to have quite a clear head under these circumstances. I don't get freaked out, but it was, there was no time to plan. It was just do. So this is when the YouTube channel became a really strong focus, and then producing the new ebook and videos and stuff like that. So I think this year, we have an opportunity to build on the Expressive Photography brand. I think I mentioned to you before we started filming, we're bringing in some new photographers, people who run their own photography businesses and workshops, but they're going to come under the Expressive Photography banner and start running trips for us in the Arctic. And here in Scotland, where we're encouraging younger photographers to come on board, full of passion, full of energy, but have great ethics and morality in terms of their approach to environmentalism, to nature first principles, which we've discussed on this show in the past. So really wanting to build expressive photography as a concept where people embrace that idea of going into the landscape and having an emotional relationship with it, and making photographs that somehow represent that emotional relationship. So that's kind of where we're doing, is building on where we are now so we've had a lot of time over Christmas break to kind of sit down and plan, and I've got a whiteboard dotted around all over the house now, and there's scribbles and scrawls and keywords and stuff. So
that's a good idea, actually. I should do that.
Well, the problem is, I mean, I've lived my life with Post-it notes, just dozens of bits of paper everywhere. But it was Anne Christine just said, well, we should get some whiteboards. So there's one in the hall, there's one in the kitchen, and
a good idea.
If we're sitting talking about things and brainstorming. The other thing I've started doing an awful lot is recording my conversations with Anne. So if I'm driving and we're kind of brainstorming stuff, we just record. So I've got a little lava mic on my lapel, and we just record everything, and Anne then goes through everything and pulls out separates the wheat from the chaff, as it were. So yeah, we're getting a little bit more focused on it's education. I mean, that's what interests me most is photography education. And I enjoy sort of collaborating, and we're doing out of the Death Valley, no, not Death Valley, the out of Chicago Live again in April.
All right.
Yeah, just it's the same as you. Just I want to keep passionate about the things we love, which is the landscape, and articulating our love for the landscape. And but this is all we can do now. I mean, we're too old to do anything else. So,
well, it's funny you should say that, because when I was talking to Karen, because sometimes I get a bit frustrated and this photography is malarkey. I mean, sometimes you just feel like just quit the whole thing, And she says, well, what are you gonna do? Like, you're a photographer. I mean, what other skills do you have? And I'm like, not very many. I mean, I could do construction or whatever, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not really in a position to I mean, I guess I could go back to school and take up something, but I don't think I'd be able to find something that has the same kind of lifestyle that I've created for myself.
It's not just that. It's I think the other. I mean, that's what I'm the optimist. I mean, between the two of us, I think I'm more optimistic generally than you are, and I think whenever we have conversations about things in private, I'm generally the one who's sort of, well, come on, let's do this type of thing, and you got to think about it from the other way, which is art would suffer if you left photography. You know, I think photography would suffer if you left photography, because I think the position that you have in it, not just your contemporary work, but you know, your whole historical relationship with photography is it's a legacy, man. It's something to be proud of. You should be proud of yourself.
Thanks. It's funny you should say that, because I was quite not disappointed, but a little bit upset when because there's a lot of photographers that I really admired when I was, and a lot when I was, you know, when I first got started. And obviously a lot of those people are older now, but a lot of them kind of fell off the cliff as soon as digital came in. They just kind of, they said, "Oh, that's not for me." And it's funny when you look at their photographs now. I mean, there's definitely a huge difference in the way that things have kind of progressed. And a lot of the old photography now, you look at it and you go, "Oh, really?" But that was true photography. I mean, that was, you know, you're taking it with your film, and either it's a good photograph or it's crap and you throw it out. I mean, there's no manipulation in between. But it's a kind of a shame that you don't hear of these people anymore, because there was some really fantastic photographers that have just kind of fallen off the wayside, you know. I mean, one that comes to mind is Darwin. Did you ever hear from Darwin Wiggett?
I haven't heard anything from him for years.
Yeah. For those of you that aren't familiar, Darwin Wiggett is a Canadian photographer, and he was really quite prolific in the 90s.
Yeah, he was huge. I mean, he was...
Same with Daryl Benson. I never hear of Daryl Benson.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to try and dig out where Darwin is. I mean, it's the last I heard, he was an artist in residence up somewhere around Abraham Lake area. I think that maybe in my mind.
Oh, really?
That was in the 2000s sometime. So I have no idea.
But there was lots of photographers like him that just kind of either they just didn't like the direction that the photography was going, or maybe they just decided to do something else. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Well, you know, for me, it's always been about the living of a life. You know, it's how you only get one spin around the wheel. You know, it's,
yeah.
You know, putting reincarnation aside, but you know, you only get one crack of the whip, and to me, it's about living a life that has value, not just to me, but to other people. And I think that's why you and I have been such good friends for so long, is we share a value, which is living life to the full. You know, I still remember hanging out at the edge of the Cinnabon, Mount of Cinnabon, in that beautiful foggy morning where just a Cinnabon rising out of the fog. Yes, yeah, right behind me. You know, that morning, it was just that experience, and how quiet we were. You know, we weren't talking really. We were just in our own little space and finding things and finding visual relationships that were exciting us. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful moment. And another guy who was there that morning was Paul Ziska.
That's right.
You know, and Paul was doing the same thing, quiet, contemplative. It was amazing how just the three of us just immersed ourselves in our own kind of relationship with that landscape. And that to me is synonymous with how we live our lives. You know, your quiet light, my expressive photography, and Paul is a great educator as well, and has such a passion for the landscape. So, you know, maybe we're in the right place doing the right thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Well, Maddie, listen, it's definitely getting towards my dinner time here in the UK. It's mid-morning for you. We've got some hours time difference. It's 6:30 nearly here now.
Yeah, it's 10:30 here in the morning, so I'm going to go and have breakfast.
Listen, man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again, and hopefully our paths will cross in person when we can this year, and we can have some adventures out in the countryside.
Yeah, we'll have to get the team together again.
Yeah, we talked about that. That would be a gas. Get Thor down, get Tom out.
Yeah.
If England ever comes out of lockdown.
Oh, it will.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully.
Rule Britannia. Oh no, sorry, you're Scotland.
Yeah, I'll be speaking to you from the independent country of Scotland in a few years' time.
You might be.
this guaranteed way to get some hate on the channel. Start talking about nationalism. Listen, man, it's been a real pleasure. I always love these conversations. It's been too long, so we've had a really good chat. So thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, man. Bye.
All right, see ya.